Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. Today we're looking at something that's probably on a lot of minds out there, especially if you're about to graduate or just starting your career. We're talking about the job market, and let me tell you, it's looking a little different these days.
That's right. We're going to be digging into a really interesting article from Channel News Asia, CNA, that came out of Singapore. It takes a look at what new grads are facing over there, and we'll try to connect it to, the bigger picture.
So this CNA piece, they don't really sugarcoat things. They just come right out and say it's tough out there if you're graduating in Singapore.
Yeah.
And to make their point, they share this story about Dia, a recent grad, I think business analytics. And get this, she's applied to like 50 jobs.
Wow.
And still no full-time offer. And oh, did I mention she graduated from a top university? So it's not like she's coming from a less well-known school.
Right. And her story kind of echoes what we're seeing all over the world. The economy is a little shaky right now, and that makes employers nervous, hesitant to hire. We had that hiring boom after the pandemic. Well, it seems like that's over, and certain industries, they're actually restructuring. And in some cases, that means they prefer someone with experience.
Makes sense, I guess.
Yeah.
So is this just a Singapore thing or what?
It's definitely not limited to Singapore. It's a global trend. And if you look at the numbers, they kind of back this up. This article, it mentions a survey from 2023, found that only about 84% of grads in Singapore landed a permanent full-time job within like 6 months of graduating.
Okay, that's still most people.
True, but it was almost 88% the year before, so that's a dip, not huge, but still shows things are, changing.
So less certainty overall. And the article points out that this is also affecting the kind of jobs grads are taking.
Yes.
Yeah, like more and more grads are taking on internships and traineeships, even contract work, while they hunt for that permanent job. Almost as if having a backup plan is becoming like the new normal.
And there are definitely things to consider here from both sides, the grads and the employers. Let's look at it from the employer side first. Smaller companies, a lot of them are right-sizing, trying to keep their full-time staff as small as possible.
So less risk for them.
Exactly. And bigger companies, those multinationals, they're being cautious with their money too. So hiring on contract is appealing. It's more flexible and it kind of lets them, try before they buy, see how someone works out before offering a permanent role.
Yeah, like a really long job interview.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, the article mentions this guy that they call him Mr. Smith, obviously not his real name. He graduated from Yale in the U.S., spent over a year like bouncing from one short-term contract to another before he finally landed an internship. Can you imagine? A whole year of just piecing things together to finally get a real chance.
Yeah, it does make you think about how the whole job scene is shifting, right?
And it does.
Yeah.
So is this like a temporary thing just because of the economy being uncertain right now? Or is this a sign of like a much bigger change in how the job market works?
That is the million-dollar question. Because if it is the new normal, grads need to be ready, right? They need to adapt. Now, the article does mention that in 2023, overall permanent employment in Singapore, it actually rose a bit.
Oh, okay. So maybe things aren't so bad.
Well, there's a catch. That overall number, it might not show the whole picture for new grads specifically. Historically, they have higher unemployment rates than the general workforce, so they might feel this shift toward short-term contract-based stuff more strongly.
Right, that makes sense. And, to make things even trickier, the article quotes an economist who points out that even though there were jobs opening up in certain areas like hospitality, those might not actually benefit new grads.
Exactly. It's about alignment, isn't it? The skills needed in those booming sectors, maybe they don't transfer easily to other areas, or maybe grads are aiming for different types of jobs, Maybe some fields are seen as more prestigious, so it's a mismatch. Adds another layer of complexity.
So what's the takeaway here? For anyone listening who's either about to graduate or, just starting out their career, what can they do to stand out, be successful in this new job market? Like, what should they focus on? Skills, strategies, anything?
Great question. And thankfully, the article gives some pretty good advice. Adaptable skills, those are key, more than ever. Things like being comfortable with tech, digital fluency, problem solving, good communication. Those are things that can apply to a lot of different fields.
So it's not just about having the right technical skills anymore. It's about being able to learn new things quickly, think on your feet, and get your point across, especially in a fast-paced environment.
Exactly. And this article, it really emphasizes building a portfolio, even through those internships and short-term gigs. Think of them not just as something to put on your resume, but as a chance to show what you can do, make connections, and maybe even, I don't know, discover a whole new career path you hadn't thought of before.
There's this quote in the article that really stuck with me. It was from an HR expert. They said, permanent jobs, yeah, those might still be what everyone wants, but starting with contract work or internships, that can be a stepping stone. So it's like a different way of thinking about it.
It is. It's about seeing those shorter term roles not as like a failure or a setback, but as a chance to learn something. You're growing your network, showing you're proactive, and gaining real world skills. That can only help you down the line. Think of it as, I don't know, getting your foot in the door.
And on the topic of support, the article also mentions how universities are really stepping up to help their grads navigate this new job market. It's not just the old career fairs anymore. They're getting way more creative.
Yeah, universities are realizing that it's not enough to just give students a degree, right? They need to give them the skills and the support to actually thrive in a world that's changing all the time. For example, they mention NTU, that's Nanyang Technological University. They're putting a big focus on what they call experiential learning.
So for those who aren't familiar with that term, experiential learning, it basically means getting hands-on experience outside of the classroom. You're taking what you've learned and putting it into practice in real-world situations through things like internships, projects, that sort of thing.
Yeah. And NTU is partnering with different companies and industries to give students these opportunities. It's a great way to develop your skills, make connections, and see what kind of work really clicks with you.
The article also talks about SMU, the Singapore Management University, and how they have a special coaching program for postgrads to help them make that transition from the world of academia to the real working world, because that can be tough.
Oh, it definitely can be. It's like they're building a bridge between, the theory of what you studied and the actual day-to-day of a job. And I thought it was really encouraging that the article also mentioned SUSS, that's the Singapore University of Social Sciences. They're even offering mental health resources specifically for people looking for jobs.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
Because job hunting is stressful, especially in this kind of market, and that can really wear you down.
It can, absolutely. It's great that universities are recognizing that and trying to provide support. They're realizing that being successful in the job market isn't just about your skills on paper. It's also about being resilient, taking care of your mental health, and having a support system.
It's like a reminder that even though things might feel tough, you're not alone. There are people and resources out there to help you through it.
Absolutely. And your own network is one of your most valuable resources, too. Don't underestimate that. Connect with people in your field, go to industry events, reach out to people who are a little further along in their careers. They can give you some really helpful advice.
So to sum up, we've talked about how the job market is evolving, this rise in short-term gigs, and how having those adaptable skills is key. But it's not all doom and gloom, right? You can still find success, even if it looks different than it used to.
Exactly. And we'll get into how to do that in the next part of our deep dive. We'll talk about making those short-term gigs work for you, using your unique skills to your advantage, and maybe even how to turn that, plan B into a fulfilling and awesome career. So stay tuned for that.
Welcome back, everyone. So before we jump into how to really make the most of those short-term gigs, like how to turn them into a stepping stone to something bigger, the article brought up this interesting story about a guy, Dr. Andrew Lee. He has a PhD in biochemistry, can you imagine? Super specialized. But he decided to take a chance on an internship in finance just to get some experience outside of academia.
Yeah, that's a really good illustration of how, even though the job market's changing, it could open some doors, unexpected opportunities. This Dr. Lee, he was willing to try something different, step out of his comfort zone, and it sounds like it worked out for him.
Yeah, totally. It shows you don't always have to follow the most obvious path, right? Sometimes those less conventional routes can lead to something really fulfilling. But the article does bring up a valid point. Some grads might feel pressured to take these internships that don't pay much, maybe even nothing, just for the experience.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that's not an option for everyone, right? Financial stability is a real thing. People need to be able to pay their bills. It's totally okay to prioritize that. But it's about finding a balance, getting experience, while still being able to meet your basic needs.
That's such an important point. It's not one size fits all. And I think that's where universities can step in and play a big role, right? They need to provide support and resources to help students figure out their finances.
Absolutely. Universities need to be doing more than just giving out degrees these days. They have a responsibility to help students navigate this job market, give them tools and resources to succeed.
Okay, so switching gears for a second, the article talked about how some companies are using AI, artificial intelligence, to do tasks that used to be done by entry-level employees. That's kind of wild, right?
It is, and it shows how important it is to keep up with technology. What was in demand a few years ago, totally different now. And that's only going to keep happening. Things are changing faster and faster.
So does that mean everyone needs to learn to code to even have a chance in this job market?
Not necessarily. Tech skills, yeah, they're important, but remember, AI can't do everything. There are things that only humans can do well, like being creative, thinking critically, understanding emotions. Those are the things that set you apart, those human skills.
Okay, so it's not just about the hard skills. It's also about, like, our humanness, the things that AI can't replicate. That's actually kind of reassuring.
Exactly, and it's something that grads should really keep in mind when they're planning their careers. Don't just focus on checking off boxes on your resume, work on those human skills. Those are the things that will make you valuable no matter what field you're in.
So if we had to give our listeners just one piece of advice, what would it be? What's the most important takeaway from all this?
Honestly, I'd say it's adaptability. Be willing to learn new skills, think about different types of roles, don't be afraid to step out of your comfort zone. The job market is in flux, and that's okay. It can actually be a good thing. There's a lot of opportunity there.
I love that. It's about seeing change as something positive, a chance to explore new things and maybe find something you really love doing.
Yeah, exactly. And don't underestimate the power of connecting with people, networking. Go to industry events, reach out to people you admire, put yourself out there. You never know what might come from those conversations.
Okay, before we wrap up, I want to take a step back and look at the bigger picture for a minute. The article mentioned how things like global uncertainty, geopolitical stuff, even changes happening inside big corporations, all of those things affect the job market.
Yeah, it's important to remember that the job market isn't this isolated thing. There are all these global forces at play, and they're constantly changing.
So for our listeners who are feeling a little overwhelmed with all of this, the changes in the job market, AI, the global economy, what's one piece of advice based on everything we've talked about today?
That's a good question. If I had to sum it all up in one sentence, it would be, don't be afraid of uncertainty. The job market is in constant motion, and that's fine. It could actually be a really exciting time to start your career because you can carve out your own path, a path that maybe didn't even exist a few years ago.
I love that. It's not about being afraid. It's about being creative, finding new solutions, building a career that you actually care about.
Exactly. And remember, a career, it's not just a destination, it's a journey. There are going to be twists and turns, detours, maybe even some wrong turns along the way. The important thing is to stay curious, keep learning, and be open to new possibilities.
Okay, on that note, I want to leave our listeners with one final question to think about. Imagine you're talking to a friend who's about to graduate. What's the one most important piece of advice you would give them based on everything we've talked about today? Really think about that for a minute.
Keep exploring this topic even after you finish listening to us. We're here to support you on your career journey, wherever it takes you.
It really is a journey, isn't it? And just like, when you're traveling, you never know what you might discover along the way.
Exactly. Sometimes those unexpected detours end up being the best part of the whole trip.
I totally agree. So as we wrap up our deep dive into this new world of work, let's recap some of those key takeaways for our listeners who are about to head out on their own career adventures.
The first thing is to just acknowledge that the job market is changing, and it's probably going to keep changing pretty quickly. But that's not a bad thing, necessarily. It just means those old school career paths, the traditional ones, those might not be the only options anymore.
Yeah. And those short-term gigs we talked about, those can actually be really valuable experiences.
For sure.
They're a way to build up your skills, meet new people, maybe even find a whole new career path that you hadn't even thought of before.
Think of them like stepping stones, getting you closer to where you want to be, but you're learning along the way.
Exactly. And we talked about those adaptable skills. Those are super important. Things like being able to solve problems, communicating well, being a quick learner. Those are going to be essential in any field, no matter what technical skills are in demand.
Those are the things that make you a valuable employee no matter what, regardless of how the job market changes or what new tech comes along.
And here's something I think is really important. You don't have to do this all alone. There are so many resources out there to help you navigate this whole new world of work.
Absolutely. Your university's career services, online communities, mentors in your field, don't be shy. Reach out to people.
Yeah, just be proactive, stay curious, and, think of it as an adventure.
And if you're feeling a little discouraged, remember uncertainty is a natural part of any journey. It's part of what makes it exciting. Embrace it and see where it leads you.
That's such great advice. So to all our listeners out there who are getting ready to start their careers, remember, the future of work is full of possibilities. You get to create your own path.
Yeah, stay curious, keep learning, and most importantly, believe in yourself.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we can't wait to see all the amazing things you accomplish.